Hello and welcome. My name is Dominic Frisby, and today we get very excited about Javier Milei and ask, how do we invest in Argentina? Before we get started, a quick reminder of two things. One is that Life After the State, Why We Don't Need Government, my first book, and many people's favourite, is now back in print. And the audiobook is very good. I recommend the audiobook. It's written by me, Winky Face. And two, the Edinburgh Festival this August. As per usual, I'm going to be doing one of my lectures with funny bits. This one is going to be all about the history of mining. It's going to be at Panmure House, in the room in which Adam Smith completed Wealth of Nations, and it's called Shaping the Earth. I'm not quite sure why I called it that, but it sounded quite good at the time. And it is going to be at 2 p.m. every day, most afternoons. Please come, and I will put a link where you can get tickets in the description, and I'll also put a link to Life After the State. Right, Argentina. So, investment writer Rob Marston, who's based in Buenos Aires, he argues that this is a secular change that we're seeing in Argentina. It's potentially as significant as the UK at the onset of Margaret Thatcher in 1979, with all her free market reform to follow, or the US with Ronald Reagan in 1980, beginning of huge bull markets in stocks. And there are also parallels with Eastern Europe, Poland, especially as they emerged from communism in the 1980s, or even China as it deregulated and went capitalist. It's important to understand the scale of what is possible. Argentina was once as rich as the United States. And what would happen if it were to regain its old majesty? How much upside is there? There is no shortage of ambition, zeal, enterprise. So let's examine what's possible. Now, many will take the mickey out of the die-hard left-winger, because when confronted with all the places that socialism has been tried, China, Russia, Germany, Cuba, Venezuela, and all the rest of it, the left-winger retorts, that wasn't real socialism. The libertarian, meanwhile, can chirp from a position of safety on the sidelines, knowing that real libertarianism has never been tried. You might make the exception of Britain in the late 19th century, when gold was money and taxes were low and government was limited. But let's not get hung up on that. So, the philosophy has never been properly put to the test. But now, in Argentina, we have an outspoken libertarian in charge. Javier Milei is the most aggressively pro-free market leader in the world. And the purists may not be satisfied. Oh, he spoke at the World Economic Forum, for example, which proves he's a puppet, apparently. But real life is always a lot more muddy than purists would like. Milei also has many ideological enemies within his own country, running many of its institutions, so he might not be able to get all of his reforms through. But he is, nevertheless, an outspoken libertarian. And so, real or not, libertarianism will be judged on Milei's success or his failure. And if he succeeds, other nations will surely follow his blueprint. And if his policies fail, libertarians can resume their place criticising from the sidelines. Now, it's dangerous to conflate ideology and investment. It's nice when the two coincide, as in Bitcoin, gold, but being wedded to an investment for ideological reasons can make you too slow to sell. However, when your philosophy is pro-free market and capitalist, and free market capitalism is supposed to be good for investments, surely one should be investing in Argentina. Elon Musk certainly thinks so. The other day he posted a picture of himself along with Milei saying, "I recommend investing in Argentina." So let's start with a quick overview. It's the 8th largest country in the world. It's enormous, but its population is only 46 million. 16 million of those people, over a third, are centred in and around the capital, Buenos Aires, on the south side of the Rio de la Plata, the River of Silver estuary. 3 million people live in the city itself, another 13 million in the surrounding conurbation, which makes up Buenos Aires province. The next largest city is Córdoba, with 1.4 million people, and then Rosario with 1 million. The country's population is predominantly urban, with around 92% of people living in cities. And led by Manuel Belgrano, the country found independence from Spain after a secessionist civil war between 1810 and 1818. And it went on to have quite the 19th century, buoyed up by its farming industry: grain, sheep, cattle, leather and wool, so that by the time of its Belle Epoque in the early 20th century, it was one of the richest countries in the world on a per capita basis, as rich as the United States. Buenos Aires was the Paris of the South, and its wealth is apparent in the grand architecture of the city. Fast forward to today, and 40% of the population live below the poverty line, 10% in extreme poverty. Argentina's shift from wealth to poverty was brought on by incompetent or corrupt leaderships, economic mismanagement, inflation, debt, you name it, Argentina has been there. The country is extraordinarily rich in natural resources, and the main exports remain agricultural produce, grains especially, but also beef and other livestock. It also produces lots of wine, and I dream of doing a steak and red wine tour. In addition to the farmland, there's oil and gas in the south, there's copper, gold, silver. The country is named after it. Argentina means silver. And lots of lithium in the north, which is no doubt why Musk and Milei was talking. A lot of those natural resources remain undeveloped. I remember being invested in a silver company called Aquiline Resources, which got bought by Pan American Silver in 2009 for hundreds of millions of dollars. 15 years later, that extraordinary deposit, Navidad, is still years from producing. Pan American has been unable to move it forward. But Milei is taking steps to free development up, encourage overseas investment, making the case for investment in Argentine mining and other natural resources quite compelling. And I should eventually do something about the opportunities in Argentine junior mining companies at some point. So let's come to demographics. Argentina's population is mostly of European descent, lots of Spanish for obvious reasons, but also Italians. Some 60% of the population is thought to have Italian blood. Italians who speak Spanish but want to be English, that's the saying. And there are many British. The British built the railways there. We gave them football, more fool us. Welsh is still spoken in Patagonia. And a long time ago, I had an Argentinian girlfriend with the surname Stewart, obviously Scottish. There are plenty of French and Germans too. About 2 million people have German ancestry. And famously, many fleeing Nazis went there after World War II, including Hitler himself, if you believe some versions of the story. But the country also has Latin America's largest Jewish population. Indeed, more Jewish people than Britain are in Argentina. Many Jewish refugees fled there in the 1930s. Of late, the country has seen large immigration from Bolivia, from Paraguay, lots and lots of people from Venezuela for obvious reasons, and also a large influx of Russians since the invasion of Ukraine. It's a relatively young country with a median age of around 32, and approximately 25% of its population is under the age of 15, and about 11% is over 65. Much younger country than Europe. So what is Milei doing? Let's talk politics. What is his plan? Will it work? So his plan is to balance the budget, and that is non-negotiable, he says, slash state spending, root out corruption in the public sector, of which there is lots, get rid of red tape, deregulate, lower taxes, simplified taxes, lower inflation, and stop printing money. I am with you, brother. He is certainly acting on his promises. The budget is already more balanced. Spending's been slashed. He stopped the money printing. Inflation, it's still high, but it's coming down. And that's month on month, by the way, 9% inflation. And people are celebrating that. 9% month on month. That's how bad things were. The US dollar also finds widespread use. And hopefully Milei, like Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, will embrace Bitcoin too. And in fact, I'm speaking at a Bitcoin conference there later this year. Tax cuts are ongoing. Import and export tariffs, they need to go too. There are still capital controls. Lots of Argentines have money offshore. If they want to bring that back, they probably will if capital controls get lifted. I'm told it's being addressed. Regulations being simplified. There's a lot more to go. And the big issue for Milei was getting his 10-point agreement to reconstitute Argentina approved. And that happened in late May. and it seems that, broadly speaking, he has been successful. And this was an extensive legislative package aimed at liberalising the Argentine economy and reducing state intervention. So I've been speaking to a variety of Argentinians and others that live there, and the general consensus is that Milei is learning fast. He was politically a bit clumsy at first, but overall his first 100 days were a lot more impressive than, for example, Mauricio Macri, who was president from 2015 to 2019. The last time many thought Argentina would be saved. One friend of mine says that he'd prefer the Peter Capaldi version of Javier Milei. That's what my Argentinian friend Mariano, a fund manager, tells me. But he's doing well. You have to understand, Peronism is never going away, Mariano continues. It's in the mentality. And maybe 40% of the country is Peronist. Keeps finding new variations. Kirchnerism, for example, that's disappearing now. But the Peronist structure still has a lot of power. But Milei has captured the imagination of the 55% who are fed up with it. But Peronism still has the power to destabilise the country. And in time, it might persuade some of that 55% of Milei as they tire. But for now, Milei's opposition is not credible. There's a lot of infighting, and the shambles is to Milei's advantage. Milei has a brilliant spokesman in Manuel Adorni, and he keeps destroying the opposition narrative. Now, my friend has a very jaded or realistic or cynical, depending on your point of view. Marco, he's an Italian investor friend of mine, he says, it feels less desolate than 18 months ago, but Argentina will only ever be a trade. Is Marco right? Have we been here before? There have been many false dawns in Argentina. There was a lot of hope around Macri, says Mariano. That didn't work. But this time it does feel different. We've never had a Javier Milei before, a self-declared minarchist who cites Murray Rothbard and posts pictures of himself taking a chainsaw to the public sector. The world never got excited about Macri in the way that it has about Milei. And by way of an example, I looked on the WEF website on the day of Milei's speech there earlier in the year, and Milei had something like 20 million views. The next most watched speech was France's Emmanuel Macron with just 20,000. Libertarianism is the dominant political philosophy of the internet, and Milei is uppermost. He might get undermined from within. There have already been strikes. He might lose the next election. He might even be assassinated. But his enemies, they hate him enough for now to do that. But for now, the policies are working better than expected and quicker than expected. By the way, I'd mentioned that I'm going to Argentina later in the year, and I'm trying to put together making a documentary about Milei and his reforms, and so please let me know if that's something you'd like to see. So, how to invest? Now, the primary stock exchange in Argentina is the Buenos Aires Stock Exchange, the Bolsa de Comercio de Buenos Aires, BCBA, and the main index tracking the performance of this exchange is the Merval. Now, I'm not touching Argentine bonds. I don't understand them. The largest Argentinian companies offer ADRs, American Depository Receipts, which you can buy and sell on the US stock exchanges. And they represent shares in a foreign company. And they're issued by US banks, and they're denominated in dollars. And so they make it easy for American investors, any investors especially, to invest in foreign companies without dealing in the complexities of foreign currencies and international regulations. So I'm going to put a list. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to a list of the companies you can buy in US exchanges. And I went through that list with Mario. I'll link to it in the description. I went through it with Mariano, and we put together a portfolio of 5 companies that give you a nice diversified portfolio across oil, banking, e-commerce, real estate, and gas. And being denominated in dollars to an extent mitigates the peso risk. So you can see that list on my Substack. I'll put a link in the comments. It's not the spiciest option, but it is the easiest way to invest in Argentina. Or there's the ETF ARGT. That's on the New York Stock Exchange, ARGT, and that holds and invests in the most liquid Argentine securities. And it's up 50% since Milei's election. So he must be doing something right. Finally, never mind the practicalities, what about a private investment? Who doesn't dream of owning a finca or a vineyard in rural Argentina, or even a place by the sea, or a beautiful home in Buenos Aires? I think there are huge opportunities in Argentinian real estate. There's very little debt. It's mostly a cash market. And should debt ever enter this market, there will be a lot of growth. But at the moment, it is still cheap to overseas currency owners. If the peso continues to stabilise, this won't remain the case. In any case, thank you very much for watching. It was quite a long video in the end. Don't forget the Edinburgh Festival and my book, Life After the State. Put links to both in the description, and I'll be back with another video very soon. Until then, goodbye.